theft actually creates more inflation. If I have theft occurring at my store, my theft increases, I've got to raise the prices on my other products and goods that I'm selling to offset my losses. So the more that people steal, the more that people have to raise prices on other stuff to compensate for those losses.
The Real Investment Show.
You know, there's a few things in life where you go, no duh. One of those is there's a trend running on TikTok right now where people are going, talking about the cost of food and things like, hey, I went to Target the other day as an example and had a basket full of stuff that was going to cost me $345. So I went to self-checkout and it was $38.70. And, this is a problem that's arising for, retailers and grocers in particular, is this whole self-checkout deal. Because theft is on the rise. Theft has doubled for groceries. Now, look, first of all, we don't have a lot of really good data on store theft because it's very closely guarded data. They don't want it to get out because they're afraid that if it gets out, that it'll spur more theft, right? If people really knew how much theft occurs at a store, then it would spur more people. It's like, oh, everybody else is doing it, I'll do it too, right? But they did a survey of Gen Zers and they found out that roughly 33%, 1 in 3 young shoppers has admitted to giving themselves 5-finger discounts at self-checkout counters. And this is according to a new survey from LendingTree. And it's not surprising. It's kind of like, one for me, one for you, one for me, one for you, two for me, one for you. And again, look, high prices of food, inflation, right? Yeah, I get it, right? I don't condone it, right? I'm not condoning that, people are doing this, but I get it, right? You've only got so much money to spend and you've got to buy groceries for your family. Then, it gets tempting to, just kind of sort of swipe the bag of kitty litter and it doesn't quite ring up, right? And just kind of goes in your bag, or you just kind of forget to, ring up the bottle, the 24-pack of water, at the bottom of the grocery cart. Those things happen, right? It's totally accidental, just happens. Maybe. But so right now these grocers are trying to figure out, what to do with these kiosks, right? So and this is the problem though. And this is the problem with theft. Theft actually creates more inflation. Because if I have theft occurring at my store, my theft increases, I've got to raise the prices on my other products and goods and products and goods that I'm selling to offset my losses. So the more that people steal, the more that people have to raise prices on other stuff to compensate for those losses. Now, some of those losses just get written off on taxes, those type of things. There's loss provisions and accounting statements, et cetera. But, ultimately it's becoming more and more problematic. And of course, laws are certainly, the political climate that we have currently, and, states like, Illinois that are basically decriminalizing things like theft and, petty theft, robberies, those type of things, are decriminalizing that activity. Is certainly encouraging this, right? If there's no penalty for stealing, then why not? Why don't we just have a big free-for-all and everybody just goes to the store and takes what they want? If there's no criminal penalty for stealing, then why shouldn't I? So it certainly doesn't, the political climate, the legal climate certainly doesn't deter young people from taking some 5-finger discounts at the grocery store, trying to save a little bit of money, especially in this environment where things are tight. As we talked about, the first segment of the show, that, the use of these buy now, pay later schemes are rising dramatically right now. Why? Because people are running out of credit cards. They've maxed out their credit card. They have no savings left in the bank account. And so now they're having to do other means of raising capital to make ends meet. Although some respondents, I'm just reading you from this. Although some respondents to the poll said they regretted having sticky fingers, 44% plan to continue stealing from self-checkout kiosks, while 37% said they would do so to save money on groceries or healthcare goods, according to surveys. Of those who had stolen at kiosks, only a third said they had ever been caught, according to the data. Retailers, as I said, are generally reluctant to release the data. So we'll see what happens. These self-checkout kiosks were a great boon to stores like Walmart and Target and Kroger's, et cetera. Go to the store, check out your own groceries, because they could get rid of the humans, right? We didn't need human checkout people, which reduced labor cost. But now some of these stores are going, you know what? It's not worth it. Right? I'll just get rid of the kiosk and I'll just add one more person back. And now when you go to shop, your checkout line is going to be an hour long. Right? They're not going to add, when you go into, it's always interesting. You go into like a Kroger and there's like 15 or 20 checkout lines and there's like one of them that's open. That's not going to change. You're not going to go back. It's not going to go back to the days when you walked in and all 15 checkout lines were open. And you could just move people through, check everybody out. Those days are over. The question will be whether or not they can figure out a way to make these self-checkout lines, more secure, which I don't get. It seems pretty easy. You just put an RFID device on all of your products, and so you just walk by a scanner, and it scans the RFIDs, and it just checks everything out, right? But who knows? Somebody will come up with somebody will come up with a solution, or the self-checkout thing will go away, and your shopping is going to get a lot longer at the grocery store. Walmart removed self-checkout stations at some of its stores in New Mexico earlier this year after employees reported a rise in self-checkout thefts, Insider reported. Similarly, Wegmans scrapped its scan as you shop self-checkout system last year because of excessive theft. Meanwhile, Costco has said it plans to station more of its employees at self-checkout after acknowledging this year that it had suffered losses in part due to the rollout of the self-checkout scenarios. So we'll see how this turns out. But again, it's a sign of the times. Look, if we didn't have as much inflation as we have right now. And this is very interesting, right? Because I get a lot of pushback. We talk about inflation coming down and how the Fed, is fighting inflation. Like, well, the cost of eggs haven't come down, or the cost of milk, whatever. And they're not going to. The cost of groceries are not going down, right? The Fed doesn't want the cost of groceries to go down. They want inflation at 2%. And what people don't understand about inflation is that, yes, inflation's falling, and this is where I get pushback. It's like, hey, inflation's coming down. We should be at the Fed's target next year. It's like, well, the cost of groceries aren't coming down. They're not going to. And the Fed doesn't want them to. But the way we measure inflation is that if a carton of eggs was, $8 in January and it's $8 this January, there's no inflation. It doesn't matter that eggs were $6 a dozen in 2021, whatever the number was. The Fed doesn't want inflation to go down. They don't want the cost of eggs to go from 8 to 6. That's deflation, right? That's severe recession. They don't want that. What they want is they want the cost of eggs to go from, $8 up 2% next year. That's what the Fed wants. They want a 2% increase in the cost of goods and services from year to year. They don't want deflation. Deflation is recessionary. Deflation is a problem because deflation is psychological. When prices start coming down, people stop buying stuff going, hey, I think it's going to get cheaper, so I'll wait. Deflation is a very hard thing to fix because that's a psychological thing. So again, this is not what the Fed wants, and so there's this big kind of misassumption that the Fed wants lower prices, and lower prices is not what the Fed wants, and we're not going to have lower prices. You're not going to see a deflationary trend in prices in goods and services. But nonetheless, the impact of modern monetary theory, this whole idea that we could just shove trillions of dollars into the economy and it was all going to be fine, led to a massive spike in inflation that's permanently raised the cost of goods and services. Those aren't going backwards. People will get used to paying for the goods and services, and that number will become sticky. That will become the new baseline. That's why gasoline, when we had negative oil prices, right? Gas didn't go back to the 70 cents a gallon that we paid back in the 70s, right? We're never going to see that again. We're never going to see a quarter for a gallon of gas because prices are sticky. But, this is, so again, I get the 5-finger discounts. I'm not condoning it, but I get it, right? If you're having trouble making ends meet, it's very tempting to skip a couple items while you're self-checking out. But that's not going to get better. So we'll see what happens. But it is interesting. I've wondered how long this self-checkout thing was going to exist, because the ease of which to not scan sufficiently all of your items, this kind of trend on TikTok of how to save money by using self-checkout, is a problem for companies. And, we're seeing stores, close, and California is an example, and other areas where, they don't prosecute shoplifting below $950. We're just seeing stores just leave, right? It's creating deserts of retailers in certain areas and certain communities. That's a problem. We just don't have any good solutions for it because we're not willing to prosecute for it. But other than that, it's a different story. Okay, that wraps up the show for the day. Get by the website. The new article is out on the website now, along with our newsletter from this weekend. So check those out. Send us emails if you've got any questions. Always happy to help you, and we'll see you back here tomorrow for the next edition of The Real Investment Show. Have a great day.